Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
Tony.
Hi, Dr.
Yeah,
Chinwe.
okay, yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. So it's
I
so
can
good
hear
to be
you
back
very well.
again for the
Yeah,
second
all good.
segment of the continuation of the digitization of the courts in England and Wales. And so we're
Yeah,
kicking off with what is the NCBDR? That is the non-court based dispute resolution. Is that a thing
yeah.
for ADR?
That is a thing. That is a thing. So there
Okay.
was a case
Oh,
which you're
interesting.
very familiar with, which the Court of
Yeah.
Appeal decided in November
Hmm.
2023, I think now. And they it was called Nether Tydfil Borough Council and Churchill and Nether Tydfil Borough Council. Nether Tydfil is a small town, a very delightful town, but a small town in South Wales.
Wow.
And the issue there was that Mr. Churchill had bought a house in 2016 adjacent to a council-owned property,
Mhm.
and his he found an infestation of the invasive weed, Japanese knotweed, which is very difficult to eradicate. It is possible to eradicate it, but it is quite tough. So he complained to the council. They did nothing about his complaint, and
Yeah.
so he sued. He sued the council, and the council said, "No, you've got to use the internal complaints process, which
Mhm.
is really for dealing with complaints made by council tenants and people using council services." But
Yeah.
anyway, Mr. Mr. Churchill's solicitor said, "No, no, no, we want to issue proceedings," and they did. And the argument was that they should. The council's argument was that the tenant, not the tenant, the neighbour, Mr. Churchill, should have used alternative dispute resolution. And that
Mm.
was an internal complaints process. So we have lots of abbreviations and even some acronyms knocking about the place. We have ADR, we have ICP for the internal complaints process, and then this case gave birth to the mother of all abbreviations, which
Oh
is
my God.
NCBDRPS. I've even seen NCBDRPS. And a huge debate grew up about what should we call ADR, which has some resonance with people around the world.
Yeah.
Mediation has more, and so you mentioned NCBDR, non-court based dispute resolution,
Yeah.
um, and then there is another version, non-court based dispute resolution processes, which
Hmm.
gives you NCBDRPS. And
Yeah.
there's a kind of competition going on as to, I guess, who can make the longest abbreviation out of this situation. But interestingly, when the civil procedure rules were amended in, I think, November 2024 to reflect the Churchill decision,
Mhm.
um, Lord Justice Burrs, the de facto chair of that committee, decided that they would use the abbreviation ADR, which is
Oh, good.
well established
Perfect.
across the globe. ADR across the globe, right? Not
Yeah.
NCBDRPS across the globe.
Because already we're struggling at the moment, like trying to get people to embrace ADR. They don't even, most people do not know what ADR means in London, in England, in the UK, in the US, in Nigeria, in Trinidad, even like so.
Yeah,
I mean,
what are we talking about, right?
I
So
went,
anyway, I understand what they're
yeah,
trying to do, but you
yeah,
have to look at it as ever with any change. You have to look at it from the user's perspective, and
exactly.
ADR is better known than CBDRPS and
Mm,
certainly mediations. So what is it? Well, it is a collection of processes which, in its purest form, are non-determinative with the help of an independent neutral. Those are,
oh,
I think, the key characteristics. Although that's so, if you look at a Civil Justice Council review
yeah.
of our pre-court guidance, which is called pre-action protocols, if you look at that, the final report came out in November 2024. There's a
Hmm.
previous report that came out in August 2023. 23. If you look at those, what it says is that you must engage in a form of ADR
Yeah.
before issuing proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
And it lists in that report, part one, the 2023 one, what they are. And it starts off after some lobbying by the mediation community. I'm not criticizing, some lobbying. It starts off, the first one is mediation, and it lists out other ones. And that can include ad hoc negotiation that is out of court, although notably doesn't have an independent neutral. And this is one of the points that was being made against the internal complaints process of Nether Tydfil Borough Council and many other local authorities throughout the land, that, if you like, the local authority is judge and jury of the complaint. There's no independence there at all. So this recommendation really is what should be implemented now. It's been almost September 2025. It's been almost a year, well over 2 years since the first part of the PAP review was published. And if we did that, if we implemented that with that near compulsory obligation to engage in mediation, typically before issuing proceedings, you would then see a great public legal education program. Millions of people would learn all about mediation.
Yeah.
Right? You'd also get a growth in the number of mediators who would see that there's business to be done. They could earn a living, right? And it would also help, of course, full disclosure, disputesefiling.com Limited, which runs an online management, ADR management platform. So that would support the growth of ADR in England and Wales. Now you could say, look at India. India has done a similar sort of thing. But what is missing in India is that they have no regime of incentives and sanctions. So just briefly, in what is proposed in England and Wales is that if you undertake ADR before issuing, you'll be off the hook to undertake mediation or ADR or generally after you issue proceedings. So that's an incentive.
So in India, so there is a cost sanction.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but it's
so
more.
It's mandatory or compulsory, yeah. Like
yes, it is. Yes, in India it is.
And Wales,
I spent some time a few weeks ago speaking at a conference about all this and learned a great deal about it. Mediation Act 2023, as you know, brought this into India. They have 3 months to do it, which is extendable, but there's no real sanction. Costs at the end of a case, which in India can take a decade, is no sanction at all. So what is proposed in contrast here, as I mentioned, the incentive. Well, there you go, right? This is what we're talking about. So in terms of sanction, what is proposed in the PAP review is that there should be an interlocutory or interim initial hearing soon after proceedings are issued to ventilate the issue of non-compliance with the obligation to engage in ADR. And that could lead to the proceedings cost sanction. That's shortly after issue, or in egregious cases, could lead to the case being stayed or struck out. Right. So this is in distinct contrast to the position in India, and I think is a much better situation. So that is what should be happening in terms of NCBDRPS or mediation to you and me.
Exactly. So are we sticking with the ADR name? Are we sticking with
the civil procedure rules are sticking with the ADR name? Yes.
Awesome. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to hear. Oh, all right. So you talked about the final report of the pre-action and protocol. Can you sort of enlighten us on what the pre-action and protocol entails?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
So, beginning with Lord Wolfe's inquiry in between 1994 and 1996, he came up with a recommendation that there should be a set of guidance called a protocol, which would apply to the pre-court space, pre-action. as lawyers call it,
Yeah.
three-court space, which would say these are the steps you have to follow.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many began, but if you have a look at the PAP review final report part one, a
Mm.
very good history of the pre-action protocols is in one of the appendices. So that's useful. So it started off with say 10 of them. We now have I think 18. One is a practice direction. The other 16 are pre-action protocols proper, just guidance, and they contain an obligation for parties. It says parties should consider the use of ADR. And it also lists out what the disclosure requirements be. And so they apply to a number of different types of litigation. For example, construction litigation, professional negligence, personal injury cases, and so on and so forth. The problem with should consider is that parties consider and then don't do it. And why is that? Why do they not engage in ADR? Because they don't have to. They only have to consider it. And when lawyers, not every lawyer, but many lawyers consider ADR, they see not alternative dispute resolution, but accelerated damage to revenue. Because the sooner you stop a case, you settle a case, you can't make any more money out of it. It sounds brutal, but I'm afraid it's the case all over the world, where lawyers, litigators typically work on hourly rates. So the more
Yeah.
work you do, the more you get paid. So that's a slight digression into why ADR hasn't taken off in England and Wales. That
Mm.
will change. That will change when they implement the recommendations of the PAP review, because
Mm.
there, as I've explained, there will be an almost quasi-compulsory
Mm.
requirement to engage in ADR
Yeah.
before issuing proceedings with a proper incentives and sanctions regime, quite a nuanced one. Hats off to Professor Masood Ahmed, who drafted that new approach. Now, um, although there are 17, 18 of these things, three of them are quite different, quite different. And the difference is this, that those three govern the operation of the only two pre-court portals or platforms that we have in England and Wales at the moment.
Yeah.
And they require the use of the platform. And those
Mm.
three, well, there's the two portals. One is the official injury claim, which is governed by Part 27 of the civil procedure rules, and the other one is the claims portal, which covers claims between £1,000, I think, and £25,000
Mhm.
for road traffic accidents, employers' liability, public liability, which means people tripping up on pavements, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and many other things. So it covers three types: PL, EL, and RTA. And the reason they are different is because the guidance, the pre-action protocol, says you must use this platform,
Mm.
which is funded by insurers, built for insurers, and sees hundreds of thousands of cases going through it, most of which settle in a form of structured negotiation platform. That's what it is, right? The problem with it, and that's what we're trying to solve now in pre-action, is that if you exit these platforms, you fall out of the system altogether. If you say, well, I can't settle for whatever reason, we're too far apart, then you come out of the system, and then if you want to take your dispute further, you have to issue proceedings in court using one of the court portals. That's how
Oh,
it works. And
yeah.
there are 6 or 7 core portals that have been created, all on a common database, common core database, right?
Yeah.
But the front end looks like 7 different portals. Each has its own criteria, qualifications for qualifying to use, and
Mm.
you have to use that. So we have, if you like, a portal archipelago, which are not connected to anything else. And with for example, official injury claim, you can print on paper, right? Paper, this stuff that we used to use so much of. you print your court pack.
Yeah.
And then you remember in part one, Dr. Chinwe, we were talking about the old days where you used to go down with a claim form and a check to the court to issue your proceedings. That's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you leave, when you exit the official injury claim, at the moment, you have to get your printed court pack and you've got to find your checkbook somewhere and you've got to put it in an envelope, buy a stamp, which is not cheap anymore, and post it off to the Civil National Business Centre in Northampton, St Catherine's House. And there, after about 2 months, I think, 2 months, they will issue your proceedings. Hurrah.
Hmm.
Right? That's what
Awesome.
you have to do.
Awesome.
It is awesome. Yes, it's awesome and awful at the same time.
So, what is your take? Do you think with all this, digitization of the courts in England and Wales, what do you think about the resolution of disputes?
Well, I think that if they get it right, if we get it right, because this is a collaborative exercise, we
Yeah,
can't say they, the government or senior judiciary.
yeah,
Government
every,
are involved, senior judiciary involved, but
yeah.
also platforms like mine
Mm-hmm.
and solicitors, advice agencies like Advice Now. We all need to come together and try and make the system is ours to make
What?
in pre-court. If we get it right, then you will have private sector ADR providers resolving most disputes. You
Mm,
know that a private sector mediator will crack, settle 80% of disputes before him or her, either on the day or within 7 days. Because that will produce
mm,
an 80% fall in the number of cases being issued in court. Now, every year in the county court, in civil courts in England and Wales, there are about between 1.8 and 2.2 million cases issued.
yeah.
Most of those lead to judgments. Most of them are settled. But just think if you had an 80% reduction, right? That would make the burden on the courts with its problems in recruiting judges, its problems with not, shall we say, suboptimal digitization at the moment. That would make it much easier to get a hearing, much quicker to get a hearing. You wouldn't have to
Mm,
wait years for a hearing. It would come much quicker because the volume of cases would be far less. That will not happen immediately, but it
yeah.
will happen over 2 to 3 years. That's why I keep saying implement the pre-action protocol review recommendations. And
Mm,
it will also be one of the biggest public legal education programs in the world because you'll
yeah.
have millions of people learning all about mediation and they're told you've got to do this.
Yeah. And so another thing that was came into my mind is how do parties sort for mediators if uh, they been if the court would order them to mediate?
Yes, this is a very interesting question.
Hmm.
It's one of the challenges.
Yeah.
So, at the moment,
Yeah.
as you know, the way in which a mediator is chosen is
Mhm.
that people go on, do a Google search. I want a mediator,
Yeah.
get lots of Google sponsored ads for
Mhm.
CEDA if they do that, or I don't know, lots of different providers. How do they pick and choose between them? And this is one of the things that the public engagement exercise being undertaken by the Online Procedure Rule Committee, the OPRC,
See,
is
yeah.
is looking at how do how does the lay user select a credible, reliable, trustworthy provider of services, mediation, for example. And that's one of the things they're looking at. They're trying to develop a quality mark, if you like, not only for platforms like DEF, but also for mediators.
Hmm.
That might be provided by, for example, the Civil Mediation Council, a trusted accreditation, where
Yeah.
people see this and they say, oh, approved by Ministry of Justice, the government, and by the Civil Mediation Council. Tick, tick. People think, well, that must be okay then, right? And so they would be led there. They would be sent to a resource where these providers can be found
Okay.
by by a data standard. And I mentioned in our first episode of our wonderful co-hosted podcast that there would be something called Liseon, which is a project which I and others are developing to help people find
Okay.
credited, trustworthy mediators,
Hmm.
amongst other things.
Oh, thank you so very much for
Yeah,
clarifying that.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that means that's a sharp reminder that technology alone cannot fix justice, without people and process on board.
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. So I think I had a look on the some of the countries that have embraced digitization in their homeland, and
Yes.
I mentioned Netherlands. It they so far they've been quite successful, but at the initial stage, of course, they had obstacles or challenges in the sense that there was cost overruns.
Yes.
And of course, the lack of buy-in initially
Yep.
from stakeholders, I mean, and the users as well, which is what is um, obtainable in most countries. Whenever there is a change, you've got so many people that would oppose it, and especially when it comes to the court system and how it operates.
Yeah.
People do not like new things at first because they don't want to adjust and all that.
None of us do.
Yeah, but however, it is they are they are getting there. It is quite successful at the moment,
Yeah.
although it remains the full embrace of digital transformation. So that's one place they are lacking. And also, I had a look at the British Columbia in Canada,
Yes.
and it is successful with the research data I found that conducted in 2023. The users are quite really outspoken and very happy with the system. They talked about they pointed out that it was quick. It was quite super transparent because that's another thing. Like when you talked about data being out there, research,
Yeah.
everything should be like put up, and then researchers can have a look, or anybody can sort of get
Yeah.
hold of the data. That is real transparency. And so the users are quite happy with their system. And of course, they've got 85% of cases resolved without tribunal hearings. Only a small number proceeded to formal hearing, to formal
Yes.
decisions. However,
Yes.
some users they have trouble, of course, understanding, like when we talked about the digitally challenged,
Mm.
and we have older people that quite, they don't quite grasp the use of technology. I mean,
Yeah.
left for
Yeah.
them, they would be like, oh, let's just carry on with the analog system, yeah. But so some of these users, of course, complained about the digital challenges they're having.
Yep.
That is understanding how to fill their forms online, and of course they needed help to proceed with all those things. So that is one of the disadvantages associated with the court system digitization of the courts in the British Columbia. We've got 10 minutes to go. And of course, we have my home country, Nigeria. They've of course
Yes.
made meaningful strides, but particularly during the COVID, they went online and all that. And and they've made meaningful strides in digitization of the courts, particularly Lagos State.
Yes.
And of course, my hometown, Enugu State and Abia State. These are cities in the eastern part of Nigeria, apart from Lagos, which is in the western part. So they've they're they're getting there. Well, it's
Yeah.
yeah, they're getting there. And so we have the Netherlands. Okay, I've mentioned the Netherlands, and of course I have my third country, the Trinidad and Tobago,
Yes.
they embraced the digitization of their courts in 2024. Let's say from the May
Yeah.
2024. So far, so good. However,
Yes.
they are yet to embrace the full digital transformation process, which is why I'm so happy that my adopted country, England and Wales, are really on the verge of embracing digital transformation, so it's long overdue because we are the pace setters and other countries would copy that. So
Well,
yeah, so far so
yeah.
good.
I think it is good. I just
Yeah.
picking up on some of those countries
Yeah.
in the Netherlands.
Singapore, Australia, South
Oh,
Korea. Awesome. Like these
yeah,
are
South Korea,
like,
the
and they're
most, the
very
most.
good with digital transformation as well. They've embraced
Oh, yeah,
Australia, I think Victoria, and South
yeah,
Korea, Singapore. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, South Korea, the most digitized
Yeah.
nation in the
Yeah.
world, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but also Singapore
Yeah.
has embraced this. Um, with the Netherlands, of course, they had the problem with funding. It was
Mm.
there was a divorce platform there which failed because the legal aid agency, the public funding agency, cut the funding when there was a change of management. There was a change of priorities. This is an issue about sustainability
Yeah.
and the vagaries of political choices. In British Columbia, Civil Resolution Tribunal is the one that is always held up as the great triumph. Because, and why is that? It is because I believe the Enabling Act passed 2013.
Yeah.
They then spent 3 years developing the platform.
Mm-hmm.
2016 it went live, as you know, and it started small with condominium disputes,
Mm.
the common parts disputes, if you like, for England and Wales, hallways, lifts, all these things.
Yeah.
And it's then spread out to low value debt claims, low value road traffic accident claims, I believe. And most recently, I think in January 24 or 25, they're doing claims concerning intimate images.
Yeah.
And so it has grown over 9 years, slowly but surely, building on experience.
Yeah.
And so it has this data sending, this data standard, which provides guidance. It's a very basic form of AI,
Yeah.
forward chaining expert system. Then leads to the adjudication, non-binding
Mm.
adjudication, as you know, and then on to the courts. If you want, it's one system. Here we're doing it slightly differently. We've got multiple front ends, and we're trying to connect them all using the pre-court space.
Mm.
In Lagos, you mentioned Lagos, of course, the
Yeah.
pace setter, the
Yeah.
beating
Yeah.
heart of
Yeah.
progress in
Yeah.
Nigeria.
Yeah.
We are, as you know, working with Lagos Multi-Door
Yeah.
Courthouse
Yeah.
to digitize the ADR part. Of course, the courts have an
Mm-hmm.
excellent e-filing system, and they've had that for some years. And so we're trying to integrate with that and working with Achere Cole, who's the director
Director.
now the
Yeah.
director. Yeah, so we're enjoying working with her on that. So it's yeah the situation across the globe varies as to the use of ADR, which is increasing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what is less often seen is the reduction of the ADR process to a digital platform.
Hmm.
It is a
Thanks.
bit for England and Wales. It's I am reminded of the journey of Odysseus, depicted in the book The Odyssey, the 10-year journey, which is really a tale of wanderings, of testing, and of omens. And I
Yeah.
think to myself, that is the journey that I have been on, or we've all been on in England and Wales over the last 9 years. We still have one more
Oh,
year to go.
yeah. Starting from Jeremy Bentham, Lord Wolf's reform, and now we're
Yes.
here. So
Now we're here, reaping the
awesome.
fruits of everything that has gone before.
And I forgot to mention US as well. They've embraced
Yes,
digitization, of their
yes. I
courts
mean,
as
the
well.
US is an interesting one. You interviewed David Allen Larson, I think,
Yeah.
who was, yeah, I enjoyed that program. I
Yeah.
enjoy his work. And he wrote a paper on the task he was asked to do for the New York
New
State
York.
Unified,
Yeah,
you know the one,
uniform.
the
Yeah.
Unified Courts, which was going to be for low value debts, and then I think it turned into
Small
credit card
claims. Yeah.
claims or the other way around. I can't remember, but really interesting paper which describes the challenges within the digitization
Mm,
of dispute resolution. So
yeah.
that was a really great interview. But across the states, I am in contact with a number of judges who tell me that they don't have really pre-action protocols as
Protocols.
we
Yeah.
do, but
Mm,
they have embraced dispute resolution in different ways,
in different
and
ways.
so ADR is a big part. Of course, we must
Mhm.
all bow down and thank the United States of America not only for helping us win the Second World War, but also for giving us the concept of the multi-door courthouse.
Portugal.
Uh,
Yeah, Professor Frank Sandler. Yay! Thank you
so
so very much.
hats off to the USA.
Yeah, this is of course a masterclass. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. I don't want this section to end, but we have to go. I mean,
Oh,
and and hopefully we're gonna hear from different scholars around the
yes,
globe on what's
yes,
happening. To have what we have, like the comparative analysis we did is not very well, at least you could have an idea what's going on, but we want to hear from the horse's mouth,
yes,
so like give our 40 minutes or an hour to hear about what's going on
yeah,
in their country or
yeah,
or continent. So I'm really excited to know who our next guest would be and the country, what's going on.
yes, yes.
So
Could
yeah.
be Lagos. Could be
Oh,
Lagos.
Lagos. Yeah, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. And how about, I'm also thinking about Professor Masood, with his new book,
Yeah.
Enhancing Access to Justice. Maybe sort of
Yes.
give it a continuation of, what we've just
Yeah.
dealt with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
you know,
his drafting. Well, the whole team on the
yeah,
PAP review were
yeah.
brilliant,
Mm,
but the drafting of that. I approached that with trepidation because I thought, oh my God, they're bound to have got something wrong, but they
yeah.
didn't. Masood nailed it. Bang, got it all
Mm.
right. I can't improve on it. So all I wanted now,
Well,
I
he's
wanted
that good
interjection.
because I read his
Comments.
articles when I was doing my PhD and LLM. So
Oh,
he's
you did?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Cool.
cited
Well,
him as well. So
then we should ask him. He should ask
yeah,
Masood to join us.
yeah. We've got 1 more minute to go. Do you have any last words for us? Thank you for
Last thoughts. Last thoughts. If you're looking at ADR across the globe, we can learn so much. That's
yeah,
the whole point of this co-hosted
yeah.
podcast: is to learn
Awesome.
from other jurisdictions, and they can learn from England and Wales
Yeah,
because
please,
God knows we've made enough mistakes here.
yeah. And so please do follow us on our podcast platforms, and of course we're gonna be having our YouTube up and running very soon. Please do follow us,
Yes,
subscribe
looking
when
forward to
that
that.
is up. But
Looking
just
forward to
follow us
that.
on Spotify, Apple, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Anyway, so
Wherever you catch your podcast, you can catch us. Take
yeah.
care.
Cheers. Thank you.
Lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.